Hello everybody and welcome back to the Overlap Breakdown channel. As always, I'm joined by my co-host Umir, who's a professional football scout and analyst, and we're here to break down whether or not Arsenal's transfer window is really good enough to win the title next season. Okay, good morning Umir. We're back again for somewhat of a gigantic video because in the past sort of 48, 72 hours, Arsenal have been
They've been cooking.
They've been
Some
cooking,
might say,
in the market, and there's been a lot going on for them. And just to run you through people who maybe don't know, who are out of the loop with Arsenal at the moment, Kepa and Zubimendi have both been announced by the club. I'm pretty sure Christian Norgard is on the verge of being announced. We've already got the here we go for that. And would be 3 signings already in the summer. But on top of that, it looks like Arsenal are also looking at Mosquera, a centre-back from Valencia, young centre-back, a really promising defender. Rodrigo from Real Madrid as more of an X-factor attacker. Gyokeres looks to be rapidly accelerating over the last 24 hours after somewhat of a standoff between them, Manchester United, so on. Noni Madueke from Chelsea is also being linked. And last but not least is Eberechi Eze from Crystal Palace. Now, it's a lot going on, and it's 8 players, and whilst all of them aren't starters, it's a very rapidly moving window. And I think me and you just spoke off camera when we were doing our notes about Berta having sort of a different approach in the market to maybe Edu, who was a bit more methodical, slower paced. Feels like Berta's now reached a point where he's like, no, we need to be ruthless in the market. And we're going to talk about this on the pitch for Arsenal. But what have you made of sort of Arsenal's doing like risk taking in the market? We've often criticised them for not taking enough risks on the pitch. Off the pitch, it does seem like Berta's been the man to sort of put the cat amongst the pigeons and, you know, go for the big moves. And what have you made sort of the profiles are interested, the wider picture of Arsenal in the transfer market?
Wider picture-wise, I think it's a really interesting change in dynamic that we've not really been used to for Arteta's tenure at Arsenal. When I'm looking at it, it feels like, and we've spoken about this as fans, as analysts, and Arsenal fans have mentioned the same thing, it feels like a very monumental transfer window. Yeah. I know that other teams around Arsenal are strengthening, and it almost felt like last season would have been the best time for Arsenal to kind of make that push, with Manchester City kind of being less than their best, and Liverpool, without signings, obviously ended up doing really well, but without much investment, and they weren't expected to kind of make that jump up and win the league last season. But now, with Manchester City strengthening, with Liverpool strengthening, I think it's right that Arsenal are being very proactive in this window. Arteta has a strong base, and we know that they can consistently put up above 70, 75 points. They've gone up to mid to high 80s, if I'm not mistaken. And in doing so, you've got a strong base there. But I think Arteta feels like he needs something different, other options, whether it gets late in the season, whether there's injuries. And I can understand being linked to numerous players. We'll talk a little bit about whether or not these are the best ways to allocate all of those funds. But I think the profiles in general are giving Arsenal an extra dimension, some transitional quality that they've lacked, some X-factor quality in the final third that they might have lacked, and then just bolstering up some positions where Tomiyasu's leaving and Jorginho's gone as well. So they're trying to address a million things at once. It's very complicated, but I think it's the right strategy in general to be very proactive.
Yeah.
The finer details is what we'll try and iron out in this video. Yeah,
for sure. I think we're trying to, not be on the borderline of sceptical or be the journalistic view and stuff like that. But Ben Jacobs, Fabrizio Romano, David Ornstein seem to be reporting the same exact thing, which is that Arsenal could end up finishing this transfer window with 4 different attackers if you include Eberechi Eze. And if we were to go through sort of the problems that Arsenal faced last season and sort of what the current links look to rectify, what would you say were Arsenal's biggest problems last season and even the seasons prior to that, when they couldn't, close the gap to a major trophy? What would you say the genuine standout difficulties has been for Arsenal over the past couple of seasons?
Last season in particular is sensible straight to point towards Saka's injury.
Yeah.
That period when he was out was a big issue for Arsenal. He carries so much of the load creativity-wise, and without him in the side, Arsenal really struggled to kind of create chances in general. He's not the biggest scorer. I don't think he scored too many goals last season in general, but to create chances for Kai Havertz, for example, he was paramount. And I think the links to Madueke, for example, make sense.
Yeah.
Now, people have questioned whether or not Madueke would sign, and why would he sign if he's coming to be a backup? I think there's more to it than that. And with so many games in a season, it's not only Saka that's going to get injured, you need depth all throughout the season, if only to make your best players play the important games with more energy coming towards the end of the season. So that makes a lot of sense as to why they might prioritise players like that. Aside from that, I've always said Arsenal are one of the best low-sitting defensive sides, although they like to play most of their game around the opposition's box and penning them in. In game states like that, you need better transitional quality.
Yeah.
Martinelli at times has shown that ability. Declan Rice is good at carrying. Havertz sometimes can peel off in behind and finish off those chances, but he doesn't have the pace and running power as, Erling Haaland might, for example.
Yeah.
So again, names like Gyokeres providing that transitional quality. Eze, who's shown that transitional quality again for Crystal Palace. They're sensible names to add that extra dimension and give Arteta another solution in games like some of the bigger Champions League games. And then lastly, I think I'll just mention, Arsenal have looked kind of one-dimensional, not in a bad sense, but they've played almost the same system and the same style of play, following on from moving away from that Zinchenko-inspired, I think, 22-23 system. They've gotten a bit more pragmatic since then, and the lineup is almost, very predictable.
Yeah.
Since the last 12 to 15 months. I think signing some of these players, or the players that they're linked to, show incredible versatility in their play. Madueke can play right wing, more central, down the left. He frees Saka to play central if he does play. Eze can play across all front three positions. Gyökeres plays down the middle but leans a little bit to the left. And Rodrigo can play all three attacking positions. So that versatility is something that I think Arsenal are very focused on. If not only to, fill in for various injured players, but also to give him other solutions when things change later on in the season that you can't predict for.
Yeah, so I think as well, whilst you were talking about some of the problems they've had in prior seasons, I think I remember one of them being Saliba's injury, which obviously Mosquera would take that sort of load off him. I think they've had issues with the first choice and second choice keeper. I'm not saying Kepa's a great solution to that, but they've also added Norgard and Zubimendi. Zubimendi's a bit
I've
more...
even mentioned Zubimendi. The progression, isn't it?
Yeah, Zubimendi's a little bit more of your traditional controller, a little bit more of a six, can play left eight, as we spoke about in a video. We made an entire video on both him and Gyokeres, and we did actually sort of favour them both relatively well to Arsenal. And I think when we're looking at the general overview of Arsenal over the past seasons, I think something that we've mentioned so many times on the channel is sort of their lack of aggressiveness and their lack of X factor in the final third. And I think when it looks like they're going to sign 4 attacking players, if you include Eze and players like that in there, it's like, does it change too much the dynamics of the front four? And one question I wanted to ask you is, we spoke about this very, very briefly off camera, but it's like we've seen a lot of these sort of inside runs from Calafiori, Miles Lewis-Skelly. Timber's been a little bit more sort of next to the centre half, but can obviously overlap, similar to Ben White. How do you picture sort of, if you were to do it on the board, how do you picture sort of Gyökeres fitting in? Does Kai Havertz drop out? And then if Eze's here, where does Ødegaard go? Because I think we mentioned that...
You're giving me an impossible task.
Yeah, we mentioned sort of like, it doesn't all gel together on paper straight away. I mean, they've signed 8 first-team players, and they don't need 8 first-team players in terms of the starting 11. So, in general, it does feel like Arsenal are going to change a lot of their dynamics, and they're going to adapt from sort of being a low-block team, counter-attacking team, possession team. So how do you imagine their 11 looking, let's say, for next season?
Yeah, I'll go through a couple of iterations. We'll go with the back four in general. I think in the Gyökeres video, we spoke a little bit about the best way to probably get Gyökeres into situations that he favours. Just as a quick summary, he favours, I think, running into these areas with big space. If we push on the opposition here, just for illustrative purposes, and we imagine that Arsenal are going long from a goal kick. So you've got your midfield there. Is that right? So we've got like a 4-4-2 here, for example. I think it's key for Havertz to kind of play off of Gyökeres if you want to get Gyökeres into some of these situations where he can attack really well. I think with Gyökeres, he's not the best at hold-up play in general, but he's really good at running in these big spaces. Whether that's on the right or on the left, I don't think it massively matters in terms of his ball carrying. I do think actually he prefers to carry a little bit from the left, and Havertz, when he chests it down with his left foot, is able to pass it inside a little bit easier. So something like this, enticing the pressure through deep build-up and then going long and almost playing in this 4-4-2 manner would make sense if Gyökeres is moving into the team and you're looking to play him in most games. Now, the alternative is you look to play Gyökeres in games where you're going to sit off a little bit and then you take Havertz out of the side entirely. Alternatively, you can have Havertz in the team against low set defenses, and then Gyökeres might rest. So they don't always need to play both games, but those are the three solutions that it generally gives you. If Havertz does push a little bit forward, I think the spaces that Gyökeres and Odegaard might find themselves in are sort of these sort of edge of the area, zone 14 areas. They're good at shooting from distance. We saw that season where I think Odegaard got 15 goals. There's a lot of these areas where he took shots in. And if Havertz is pinning the defence like that, these are the spaces that open up. With the left winger, I think having a left winger who can crash the box, that frees some of the space on the edge of the area here for maybe a Gyökeres or Odegaard to pull off, makes a lot of sense. And then the links to a Rodrigo or a Eze makes sense for that reason as well. One question mark I do have about all of these things would be, if you have a left winger that's moving inside, who's going to provide that width on that left hand side? Is it going to be Calafiori, Skelly, who I prefer inside, or an overlapping left back? So that's one of the question marks I do have. Hopefully that kind of explains some of the systems and ways that they can utilize some of those players. Madueke, I think, slots in fairly naturally there. It does give you the option to move Saka inside and play as one of these middle players. In a 4-2-2-2 or a 4-2-3-1, I think he'd be brilliant more central, but I don't know if Arteta will use him in that way. But many solutions. I think the adaptability is the key thing for Arteta. Whatever the opposition sets up like and whatever they need to answer that setup with, I think he wants pieces to be able to do that.
Yeah, brilliantly explained in terms of sort of the general idea of what it looks like if it's all pieced together. But one of the ideas that we were sort of mentioning is like, so we've just spoke about Arsenal playing a little bit more counter-attacking, a little bit more transition. Can we get Eze inside? Can we make him running behind? I've got Eze's shot map here, which shows this season where he scored 8 goals from 10.5 expected goals. Sort of a massive cluster outside the penalty area, as you just said, like coming inside, almost sort of the tip of the left side of the box there, which makes sense. His heat map is very similar. We've kind of got a left winger who's starting relatively deep, but then drifting inside. I think he played, obviously, in the Glasner's 3-4-3 as sort of that left-sided player and pulls out wide, slots inside. So he's definitely, for me, Eze is definitely more of a central player. I can understand people saying that he could play left wing, and I think he's got sort of the right. He's very physical and he handles contact really well, and I think his first step's really good. But I don't imagine him playing out wide in a transition Arsenal team. I think he would be a central player, someone who can pick up the ball sort of in these areas, spin and drive. He's got this really unique ability to play passes sort of with the outside of his foot, with the bottom of his foot, inside on the run, as we've often spoken about. Some of the best transition players, you watch them make these sort of 20-metre sprints with the ball, but then as that split second where the pass is on, can we execute that pass? No matter sort of if it's outside the foot, weak foot, round the corner, in behind, a longer ball. Eze's kind of got that ability.
And we've said Gyökeres is best sort of transition zones or inside right, taking shots from this area. I know he likes to carry and come inside here, but just pure shooting quality from this area makes a lot of sense. So again, that left-footed pass into that zone might be an option to look at.
If you watch a lot of Mateta's goals from this season, you will find that Mateta's almost ran off the shoulder and Eze somehow found him. And it just looked, it's a very good dynamic on the break. And I have my reservations more so about Eze, as we spoke about before, where it's like, if the block is pinned back like we usually see Arsenal, does he get enough space in between the lines? We're speaking, if this is on the edge of the box and he's inside here, can he get the touches that he needs in this position? If you're enjoying the video and want more tactical analysis and podcasts, please press the subscribe button below and hit the bell to enable post notifications. Yeah, so with Eze facing a deeper set defence, I would imagine him playing more so in these positions. So I think maybe this is probably the best example of a counter to use him. I think he can play here, and I think he might enjoy the more space he gets out wide. But I think if we're looking at Eze's best actions, we've just had a look at his heat map, we've just had a look at his goal, his shot map. Everything's sort of this diagonal here, sort of taking the ball, spinning, and he likes to do this thing where he feints at the top of the box until the shot's open. Aguero used to do that at top of the box, loads of fake shots.
Gyökeres does it as well.
Yeah, Gyökeres does it actually, very, very well. So a lot of sort of fake shots, jittery movements across the edge of the ball, driving with the ball, committing defenders to free up sort of either a shot here or sort of someone spinning in behind. And that's one of these things that he does quite well against set defences. The only concern I have about him against a set defence is sort of taking away that ability to carry and to play these aggressive balls in behind over large distances. But if we speak about generally, we've just talked about Eze and we've just talked about Gyökeres. We're speaking generally, they're more players who are suited to a transitional end-to-end sort of game. And I just wonder next season if we could see a different Arsenal, if we could see maybe playing devil's advocate, he might have looked at what Arne Slot's done and not compromising his style, but adapting and, sort of looking at, okay, we've got a player here who wants to take 4 touches before an action. How do we generate them 4 touches where we can give him bigger space to run into rather than these really tight, confined boxes? And I think Noni Madueke is also a player who can sort of benefit off both. I think under Maresca, he's had a lot of these deep block facing situations, but he is a great player over large distances as well, but he is good versus set defences. Yeah. So one of the questions I wanted to ask you was, how are we going to see a shift in Arsenal moving into next season with them 3 players, in my opinion, point towards sort of a different angle towards Arsenal? And do you think they will change going into next season?
I think they'll add another string to the bow. So I think Arne Slot's a great example. Guardiola's a great example. If we're looking at the general trends tactically of the Premier League and in football in general, teams press man-to-man high. It's almost every team. I know even the teams that like to sit in, defend deep, from goalkeeper situations of the opposition, they still often like to press. There was sort of hybrid pressing, which is very popular, but it moves from almost a zonal shape to going man for man across the pitch. Now, if you're going man for man across the pitch, you're leaving 1v1s everywhere across the pitch, and also the opposition is penned in your half. So there is big space to attack. With Manchester City, we've signed transition attackers in Marmoush, for example. Erling Haaland is in essence a transition attacker as well, although he's great against a low defence, and we've utilised them in those moments. So I think Arsenal have been as great as they have been for the last couple of seasons, but they've not really had the opportunity to utilise that solution against teams. Now you're bringing in players who, especially the half and half players, I think Eze, for example, I think Madueke, for example, I'm yet to really see Gyokeres against the deep set defence, so I'm not sure. But those sort of players can give you a serviceable quality in possession play, but then it gives you a very strong option to go long and, scare teams into either sitting back deeper and not pressing you, or if they do try and press you, taking advantage, and most teams will try and press you. So there's an added solution for Arteta's game there. On top of that, I do wonder as well in games, if they've took the lead 1 or 2 goals up, swap out some of your possession attackers, because we've seen last season as well, they played really well, they scored a lot of goals, they beat most teams until Saka was injured. So even if you run with that same team for the majority of games, once you are winning 1 or 2-0, you bring on some of your transition attackers, you rest some of your best players, you get some goals in counter-attacking situations, you've got really good set defence, and then your best players get rested for the running at the end of the season. So they're my 2 kind of rationales for why they might be opting for these kind of profiles, because they've not really had players like this in their team for the last couple of seasons.
If I was an Arsenal fan, I'd be kind of going into the window looking at, what are the things that we need to rectify going off the last 3 seasons, got a new sporting director, we need to win a trophy this season. It's sort of, it's reached the climax point of this phase of Arteta. And for me, I think they lack an X-factor attacker. A player like Rodrigo does deliver this. I think Bradley Barcola, just off the top of my mind, is a really good option. Rafa Leao, these sorts of players who have outstanding quality out wide, whether it's goal getting, dribbling, scoring, whatever. But Rodrigo would be a very good, target to get for there. I'm looking at, they needed Saka depth for last season. When he got injured, he didn't really have many answers. Noni Madueke sort of fits him quite well there, whether or not the fee's right and etc. But if we're sort of looking at a left-footed right winger who's experienced playing 1v1 against set blocks, pretty good.
You don't want the level to drop too much with the backup.
No, yeah.
So I think they've paid for that and the versatility on both sides.
Yeah, and obviously Maresca did use him left wing towards the end of last season, which he did okay in, but probably isn't his best position.
Yeah.
needed a striker. Everyone knew they needed a striker. Gyökeres, it looks like they're going to get him. They needed a backup for Saliba. They needed depth there. It looks like they're going to get one. They need a Jorginho replacement. They've got one. They needed a sort of someone who was a bit of a 6 and an 8 to take some of the burden off Declan Rice and push him a bit forward. Zubimendi, they've got that. Needed a second keeper. They've got that. It looks... take the names away from it. Maybe the profiles, in my opinion, your opinion, of Arsenal fans' opinions, maybe they could be better. But I think it's really promising for Arsenal fans that they have sort of identified the issues they had in the last 2 seasons and looked like they're going to rectify nearly every single one of them. But yeah, just to wrap up, do you think this is enough to sort of push them on? I'm pretty much in the camp that I think I've said Arsenal are going to win the league for the last 2 years.
Yeah.
I think going into this season, it's one of the years where I'm like, I'm not sure. I'm not really sure. Even though they've signed, they're going to look to be signing 7 or 8 players.
Yeah, I think it's tough because you're comparing them to the work that Liverpool's and especially Manchester City look like a better team. I know they've been eliminated from the Club World Cup and they will need to hone some of their, I think, transition defending as well. But they've got really strong attacking quality and the signings that they've bought look to be good. Arsenal, in who they are looking to signing, seem to be shopping in that 50 million to 60 million pound range. Liverpool going really big on sort of the 100 million pound and, you know, they're really elite players on top of a title winning squad. I don't know how, if Liverpool still keep up that same kind of quality and teams haven't figured them out, how Liverpool will be surpassed by an Arsenal, for example, you know, aside from like injuries and things like that. With Arsenal, although I think there will definitely be an improved side, I do wonder again, in those games where they drop points against those really stubborn defences, against sort of the likes of Aston Villa, will the new signings be enough? Because I do think they've added a lot of quality, but if a team completely sits off them and says, look, come break us down, we've got great counter-attacking strikers, we're not going to press you high, now where are your solutions? I think you need that left wing piece.
That left wing piece is
to be really, you know, someone who gets goals, in my opinion, because Saka can chip in with goals, but he's not that top goal scorer. He's a brilliant creator. Havertz is carrying the goal burden. Odegaard, you have to probably maximise him in some way, but someone needs to share the goals this season coming forward with a Kai Havertz, and I think you need a brilliant left winger, irrespective of whatever other player you do sign.
I think one of the things that we mentioned just before we wrap up is obviously that Arsenal needed goal scorers. They needed goal scorers because Kai Havertz's sort of ball striking and execution of big chances isn't where it needs to be if you want to win the league title. That's fact. We know that. But Gyökeres is obviously yet to be seen whether or not he can deliver that. Obviously, I'm a fan of Gyökeres. I think he'd be a good addition to the Premier League. And coming here with just a merit of scoring goals is a really big underlying...
and he's a great ball striker as well.
Strikes the ball really well. He's a big lad, he's powerful, and he knows where the back of the net is. And I know it's a cliche, but bringing in someone who's experienced in scoring 30 goals, mentally adapting to a league, even if the league is tougher, even if he has less touches in order to take a shot, it does feel like he knows how to get goals. He's been through bad patches, he's been through really high patches. He'll know how to cross roads with them. And I think... yeah, for me, it's exactly as you said there. I think last season, I think a lot of people were talking about Arsenal having a scoring issue. I personally believe it's a creative issue. And sort of, especially if Saka's not delivering on that high quality, which he always does, his consistency is absolutely unbelievable. But I'm talking like, is that X-factor attacker in the squad yet? And if he's not in the squad, I don't believe your biggest problem is solved yet. And I'm talking a world-class wide forward. I'm talking a Rodrigo, Rafael Leao, someone who could come to the Premier League and just offer Arsenal a completely different sort of dynamic to Martinelli in terms of quality even. So I think it's really good. I think, honestly, on paper, I think they've rectified a lot of issues. I think the profiles, yet to be seen whether or not they're good enough for what the Arsenal's weaknesses are. But in terms of the depth, they've got Champions League now, and I'm pretty sure if you went through the squad, they'll probably have 2 players in each position who are very, very, very good players. So, yeah, it's a really interesting one. I hope for Arsenal that the left wing talks sort of accelerate and they do go and push big there. And I would compromise on someone else just to get that in.
Which is perhaps why they've gone Gyökeres over Sesko. Yeah,
bit of a cheaper option. I think if that saves you 10 million, you can go all in on a left winger, especially if it's Rodrigo for me. Yeah, I just think that would be if they got that signing done, I'd be like, right,
Worthwhile
now we're in
then.
business.
Yeah,
Now we're in business. So very, very good from Arsenal. Ruthless in the transfer market. We praise Liverpool for doing it. We've got to praise Arsenal for doing it, and yet to be seen whether or not the profiles are good enough, but
it'd be exciting.
it'd be very exciting. And I think the Premier League next season is just going to be
Crazy, isn't it?
crazy. Yeah. So thank you very much for watching. If you did enjoy, please don't forget to like, comment and follow the channel, and let us know what you think about Arsenal's transfer window so far. And we'll see you next week on The Breakdown.